Today's episode is one of the pillars of the Sober High method, and honestly, it is one of the most powerful steps in sobriety: pattern recognition. This is where you start to realize drinking was never random, and it was never a just because. It was never about willpower or weakness. There were patterns, there were triggers, there were emotional loops, and there were beliefs. There were moments where alcohol slid in as the easiest, quickest, and most familiar option. And once you see those patterns clearly, really clearly, your whole relationship with alcohol starts to shift. So today we're going to explore the patterns that keep you stuck, why your brain repeats them, how to identify your personal triggers, the emotional patterns underneath drinking, and how to interrupt the loop with clarity instead of shame. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Sober High. My name is Indy and I am a sobriety coach and addiction advocate. And I'm so happy that you're here. This is really the first episode of the Sober High, which I'm really excited about. The episode prior to this was just me giving you a little bit of a rundown of who I am and what my story is. So if you didn't listen to that, flick on back. It'll give you some context as to where we are and where we find ourselves today. But it's so great to have you with me. As I said in the opening, we are looking at pattern recognition, which is one of the key pillars of the Sober High method. And so I'm really excited to have you here to unlock some of these key instincts that you need to have when you start to think about your drinking and question your relationship with alcohol. So I want to start with a very specific moment where I realized drinking for me wasn't just something I did, and this may resonate with you, because what I was seeing in myself was that drinking was a pattern. There was this one night, there was nothing dramatic, it was nothing explosive, but I found myself pouring another glass of wine in the kitchen, even though I had promised myself that morning that I wouldn't drink that night. Does that sound familiar? I can't recall how many times I actually said that to myself, but here was another time. And I remember catching my reflection in the oven door, and for the first time, instead of feeling shame, I felt curiosity. Like I was asking myself, why am I doing this right now? What came before this? Why am I feeling this way? What am I avoiding? Which I think is one of the really big questions that we avoid asking ourselves. And the other one was, what am I reaching for? What am I looking for? And for me, it was like someone pressed pause on that whole scene and I could suddenly see the pattern. So I'd had a stressful day. I had sensory overload. I was emotionally fatigued. I had a moment alone, and my automatic move was to reach for the wine and pour it and sip it. And my brain was like, better. It was the same cycle every time. I just hadn't slowed down enough to notice it. And it was at that point that I realized it wasn't just about the wine. It was about the sequence. It was about the familiar loop that my nervous system had learned. And recognizing that, honestly, changed everything. Because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt the pattern. And once you interrupt the pattern, the spell breaks. So I kind of liken it to, there's this part in The Wizard of Oz, obviously, when they get to the Emerald City and they're standing in front of the great and powerful Oz and they're seeing this huge, it depends on what version you're watching, but this huge holographic face or this huge mechanical face, and, you know, this great and powerful master lives behind this face and he feels all encompassing and all overwhelming and all powerful. And Dorothy follows Toto behind the curtain and realizes that the great and powerful Oz is literally just a man sitting there talking into a speaker box. And for me, recognizing that pattern and breaking the spell that it had over me, or at least knowing where I needed to interrupt the pattern, felt a bit like dismantling the great and powerful Oz. So I really want to talk about patterns and how and why they form, because it's really not your fault and it's not a failing. It's just the brain, the amazing brain, your amazing brain doing what the brain does best. So the brain absolutely craves efficiency. It loves shortcuts, okay? If you can automate something, your brain will do it. You know, have you ever had that moment where you've been driving home from somewhere familiar and you're suddenly in the driveway of your home and you're like, okay, how do we get here? Like, I just feel like I blinked and we're here. It was like you drove home in autopilot. That is the brain automating and creating a shortcut because it loves efficiency. It's less energy for it to do that. It's just you're on autopilot. Alcohol, in the same sense, can become very automated because it provides rapid relief, right? And your brain has clocked that. It remembered it. And over time, it turned alcohol into a fast, efficient, and predictable routine. Not because it was good for you, but because it was familiar. Now, whether you know this or not, which I'm sure you will if you've been on the earth for any more than a day, you'll know that habits are created through repetition. And every time you drink to relax or socialize or avoid discomfort or self-soothe or cope, your brain strengthens the association between how you're feeling and the medication, which in this case is alcohol. So eventually the brain doesn't wait for your permission on that. It offers the urge automatically, right? So it sees the trigger, the craving, it knows what action to take, it knows that there's going to be relief there, and then it will reinforce it. That is the habit loop, okay? And when you start drinking alcohol to relax, to disassociate, to deal with stressful situations, you really are stuck in that habit loop. Now, your limbic system, which stores emotional memories, also plays a huge role. Because if alcohol once helped you feel calm, confident, connected, numb, relieved, any of those, it treats alcohol like the solution, even if it's actually making things worse. So when the emotion arrives again, the memory fires. And this is why certain situations feel charged, even when nothing dramatic is happening. The nervous system is always looking for homeostasis. It's always looking for regulation. And almost all drinking patterns are about regulation, not about alcohol. So your body is in a state of dysregulation. You're stressed, you're feeling emotional, you're looking for comfort, you're tired, you're any number of things that cause you to reach for a drink indicate that your body is feeling dysregulated. And alcohol really does provide a quick source of regulation. And your brain has repeated the pattern over time. So when you are looking at your relationship with alcohol, really what your brain has done has become a very well-oiled, efficient machine to try and get you and your nervous system regulated in a way that feels as though it's helping, when in actual fact it's really doing a lot of harm. And it's not biology, and the fact that you're stuck in this loop has got nothing to do with being weak or being broken or that you're a failure. Pattern recognition is all about understanding the system. And once you understand the system, you can absolutely change it, which is the amazing news. So it's not you. All right, so here is where the magic happens, okay? And I'm going to walk you through the 4 categories of patterns that you can look for in your own life. We're going to start to identify your personal patterns, because once you see them, you really cannot unsee them. So grab a notebook if you can, because we're going to jot a few things down here. All right, so let's look at our triggers. What actually happens right before you get the urge to have a drink, okay? And these can be emotional, so things like stress or loneliness, boredom, overstimulation or anxiety. I know that a lot of mine was boredom. The others can be situational, so the kids are finally asleep, or you're driving home from work, or it's a Friday afternoon, okay? Situational triggers. Social triggers, which can be dinners, parties, certain friends that you hang out with, and internal triggers. So things like self-criticism or not feeling like you're enough, okay? So I want you to sit with those for a minute. And now I want you to ask yourself, what consistently comes before the urge to have a drink? What consistently happens before the urge to have a drink? I know for me, like I said, boredom was a big one. The kids finally asleep was also a big one, especially when they were a lot younger. And things like the weekend, Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon was a great opportunity for me to crack open a bottle of wine and sit with my partner on our deck and drink until the wee hours of the morning. Okay, so ask yourself what consistently comes before the urge. Now I want you to look at your time-based patterns. Okay, so you might notice that your drinking habits are linked to 5 p.m. or weekends or after work or after an argument. It's a big one. After school pickup or after bedtime routines. The body remembers time like muscle memory. Okay, so let's have a think about that. Are there anything that you notice, a time or times that you consistently will have the urge to have a drink? Now I want you to think about environmental patterns, okay? So your brain gets cued by things like the kitchen or the couch or that one glass of wine or certain restaurants or even certain aisles at the supermarket. The environment becomes part of the ritual of drinking, okay? So think about that one, and if you can pick out anything that you think when you're thinking about the times that you have said to yourself, I'm not going to drink, and you've broken that because you've fallen back into a pattern of drinking, think about those times and jot those down. Okay, now we're going to really go deep, okay? Because this one's big. Most drinking patterns come from emotional loops, okay? Things like, I can't handle this feeling, or I need to feel relief, or I just need to switch off. Like I said at the opening, I need confidence, I need comfort, or I need quiet, okay? Think about the emotional patterns and the emotional loops that you find yourself in when you reach for a drink. I know that might be a tough one to confront because sometimes, and I will attest to this, a lot of my drinking had to do with the fact that I was avoiding how I was feeling. And I was avoiding confronting some of the really yucky feelings that I had about certain people, about my relationship, about myself, about where I was in my life. And drinking seemed to switch all of those thoughts off, okay? Made everything quiet. I didn't have that self-reflective kind of monster pinning me down at the end of the week. He was kind of kept at the door when I drink. So I know that this can be really tricky to do, but you're in a safe space. And no one is ever going to see these answers but you. So write down what patterns emerge for you from an emotional perspective when you think about drinking. Because seeing them in front of you is really powerful. And also, once you name the monster, it really becomes a teeny tiny little storm in a teacup. Everything is fixable. Everything is figure-outable. And you have the ability to confront whatever it is you're feeling. I'm going to liken it to this, right? I went through a period of time where I didn't want to open mail, okay? I didn't want to see the bills. I didn't want to open the mail. This was when I was really young, maybe like in my mid-20s. I didn't want to open the mail. I didn't want to see what bills I had. I didn't want to see if I'd gotten any fines. I just didn't want to know about it. And so the mail kept piling up and it kept piling up, and I didn't feel better. I just kept feeling more anxious about the fact that, oh great, now I haven't opened that piece of mail, or I haven't opened that piece of mail, or I haven't done this, or I haven't done that. And so it would just build up. And in the end, it would get to a point where I was like, I'm going to have to look at this stuff. I'm going to have to open it. I'm going to have to be a big girl and have a look at it. And so I would sit there and open it all. And what I realized after opening, weeks and weeks and weeks of unopened mail was that it really wasn't that bad at the end of the day. And that it felt so much better looking at it and laying it all out in front of me and going, right, how am I going to tackle this? How am I going to tackle that bill and that bill and that bill, and get it into a system and sort it out and organize it in a way that makes me feel free and clear of that anxiety. That's kind of how I feel about the emotional trigger part. Because once you realize what it is you really are trying to fulfill, or what you're really trying to achieve when you drink, you can look for it elsewhere. Because a lot of the time, as I said, I would drink because I was bored or lonely, or my mind just wouldn't turn off, and I was looking for peace. I was always looking for peace at the bottom of a glass of wine. I was always looking to just feel that sense of like connectedness with peace. And I thought that it was at the bottom of a glass of wine, but come to find out it actually exists when you have full clarity and control over your behavior in your life, being genuine with people and being completely in the moment. That is a peaceful existence. And it's a peaceful existence also to when you have something come up. For example, like I'm looking at the list of things here in terms of, the emotional loops that we can get stuck in. Like I can't handle this, or I need relief, or, I need this medicine. I need this alcohol to get through this really tough part in my life. There is an incredible strength that comes from getting through something really difficult in life without reaching for a drink. I don't think you can grow and become the person you are truly meant to be if you're constantly leaning on alcohol to get you through. I can't see how I don't see how the two coexist. Because there is nothing that could be thrown at me that I wouldn't be able to get through in a way that's peaceful and calm and connected. And I've been through, over the last 2.5 years of being sober, there's been a lot that's happened, and I've grown a lot, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any stretch. Oh my God, no way, no how. But there is this sense of like, I've got a grounding within myself now that would not have been there had I chosen alcohol over actually going through and feeling the emotions and coming out the other end as the person that I'm meant to be. So all that to say that whatever you write down on your notebook, about what the emotional loops are, what the emotional patterns are, believe this. You can absolutely address what you're feeling or what you're needing without reaching for alcohol. But I digress, because we are talking about emotional patterns, and patterns are really predictable, okay? And predictable patterns are also interruptible. All right, so we understand how the brain works, right? It loves patterns. It loves to categorize things and make sure that it's working at its optimal efficiency and saving as much energy as possible. It loves automation, right? So now I'm going to guide you through a really short practice that you can use anytime you feel stuck in the loop. It's called Pause Pattern Plan, okay? And you can do it in your car, in the bathroom, on a walk, on the couch. You can do it anywhere, all right? But the first step is to pause, okay? Just stop. Don't act. Don't judge. Just pause. Take a slow breath in and a long breath out. And this act alone interrupts the nervous system's automatic response. So, deep breath in and a long breath out. Step 2. You are going to gently ask yourself, what just happened? What am I feeling? Have I felt this before? Is this part of my usual loop? And what is my body actually asking for? Bring curiosity, not blame. Be a scientist of your own mind. Okay? What am I looking for? What am I searching for? What does my brain feel like alcohol is going to give me at this point when I am feeling the urge to have a drink? Step 3 is to plan. Okay? So I want you to ask yourself, what is one alternative action that I can take right now? Who can I message? Can I step outside for a minute? Can I get a cold water? Can I go and move my body? Can I sit with this feeling for 90 seconds? Okay, and I'm going to give you this analogy, and I really don't know who to credit this with because I saw it on Instagram years ago, and so it would be really hard for me to find the person to credit this. But if that's you, please let me know. So I came across this reel, and it changed the way that I thought about my emotions and my feelings. Imagine you are sitting in the grandstand of a college football game, okay? And it's just you sitting in the middle of the grandstand and you're looking out onto the field. And from behind you, more to the left, you can slowly make out the sound of a marching band, okay? You can start to hear it coming across your left ear. And you can hear it starting to come through the gate that they walk players up into to make sure that they get onto the field to play the game, okay? You can hear it slowly creeping along, right? And then all of a sudden it's on the field. This huge marching band with, drums and brass, and it's making a racket noise. It's crazy, crazy loud, right? On the field it comes, okay? It's walking until it gets right into the middle. And in the middle, because you are sitting facing it right in the middle of that grandstand, it is the loudest marching band in the world. And it is just going gung-ho, right? It's still marching, it's still walking, but now it's at a bit of a slower pace. And you're watching it and you almost can't. It's like overstimulating. It's overwhelming to your eardrums. You are just, oh God, this marching band, come on. You guys are great, but it's time to move on. And slowly it starts to walk off field down the right side gate and walk its way off. And you can still hear it kind of in the background until it all of a sudden just fades off. This Instagram reel, way back in the day, said that this is how we should think about our emotions, okay? We are a spectator of them. You can hear them coming on. Here they come onto the field. Oh my God, right in front of you. It's chaos. It's booming. But know that they have to walk. That feeling has to leave at some point. So when you start to be a spectator of your own emotion and your own feelings, it really changes the way that you look at things, because this isn't coming from me. This is something that I'm observing happening in my body, and I know that it is going to wander off eventually. So I love the idea of thinking about your urges in the same way. Okay, so can you sit with this feeling for 90 seconds? Can you observe the marching band walking onto the field for 90 seconds? Okay, and the plan that you're making here, when you feel the urge to drink, it doesn't have to be heroic. It just has to interrupt the cycle, okay? And every time you interrupt the pattern, even once, you create a crack in the old identity. You weaken the wiring and you're building something new, because the amazing thing about your brain is that it has neuroplasticity, okay? And your brain is constantly wanting to fire off and find new pathways and create new connections. And when you do that, when you interrupt the pattern and you interrupt the cycle, you are creating a new pathway in your brain. You are creating a way for your brain to go, well, if I feel this ever again, I'm going to choose that pathway. Or at least it's going to have some options. It'll say, well, we can go this way, or we did do that one thing one time that went this way that wasn't alcohol, so maybe we can try that again. Again, you are just trying to break your brain to create new patterns. to build something new. Your patterns don't define you, okay? As we close this episode of the podcast, I just want you to hear me really clearly, because you are not your patterns, and you never were. These loops were created because you needed comfort, relief, connection, or rest, and alcohol was the tool you were handed. You were handed it by friends, family, society, the entertainment industry, like you name it. We've been told that this is the way to cure these feelings that we have. But now you are learning new tools, and you're learning about yourself, and you're becoming really conscious with things that used to become really automatic. This isn't about perfection at all, okay? Perfection doesn't belong here, but it's about awareness. And once you start seeing the patterns, you can change them. And once you change them, you can change everything. Sobriety and an alcohol-free lifestyle isn't about controlling your behavior. It's more about understanding yourself deeply enough to choose something differently. And you're doing that right now. Even listening to this podcast, you are doing that. And I'm really proud of you. And I want you to know that I'm with you every step of the way. And I can't wait to walk with you through the next episode. So thank you so much for joining me on the Sober High. Break those patterns, kick them to the curb, and I'll see you on the next episode. Okay, here's the part where I've got to say the legal stuff. Everything you hear on the Sober High is for education, conversation, and a little inspiration. It's not medical or mental health advice, and it's definitely not a replacement for professional help. If you're struggling with alcohol or addiction, please talk to your doctor or reach out to a support service. The stories and opinions shared here are personal. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. I can't promise it's perfect or complete, and you're always responsible for your own choices. The Sober High is a production of The Sober High and Roller 3 Studios.
Nice one. Good job.
Thanks, Dad.